Ladies and gentlemen, this is Verity Seeker, and I'm Mark Powls, your host, and we have a wonderful guest here today. We have an independent candidate running for Kansas governor, Dennis Pyle. And Dennis, I'm really grateful that you were able to come on the program today because we really need to get your name out there. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Mark.
All right. Well, we're going to jump right into it. And the first thing I'm going to ask you is, who is Dennis Pyle?
Okay. Well, I'm a fourth generation farmer. I've known farming forever. My family has been livestock and grain farmers for as long as I've been around. And that's what Jennifer and I do. We moved to where we're currently at here in Northeast Kansas. We live north of Hiawatha, about 6 miles. And some people think this is the garden spot of Kansas. And right now it's pretty dry, and but we're going to have a crop. We're very thankful and blessed. You know, God's put us in a good area, and it's nice. We were married in 1980. Jennifer and I, we've been married for 42 years. We've raised our daughters on the farm. We went to Omaha for a couple of years. I went to Bible college, learned a little bit more about the Bible, and it's very important to both of our value system. And so, but we had 6 girls. And so I don't tell me farmer daughter jokes. I don't really care to hear them. And so anyway, we raised all 6 of them. We started homeschooling in the later 80s and homeschooled all of our daughters. Faced a lot of difficulty and problems, you know, from administrators and stuff with that situation. So we understand and relate to a lot of the parents out there that are facing the challenges that's going on right now with the schools. But yeah, we raised our family, and we're right now we're enjoying grandparenting. Having 6 daughters, 5 of them are married, one of them single, and she does accounting for a company down in Lenexa. So, but we have 13 grandchildren so far, all under the age of 6, and we have 2 more on the way. So we're looking forward to them in the next, I'd say 6, 7 months. So we'll see what we get. Right now, the girls are ahead of the boys, and we're not sure that the girls are going to lose that. We kind of feel like these 2 coming are going to be girls. But anyway, we have a lot of family. I come from, there were 8 of us, 4 boys and 4 girls. I'm number 5 in the lineup. So second boy, I have 3 older sisters that treated me like their baby, and probably why I have a couple scars, and you know, and so it's just I'm your run-of-the-mill average farm guy out here in Kansas, and I was first elected to the Kansas House. I ran in 1996 against incumbent Democrat. I'm very pro-life, and his record on tax and spend, different issues, I was asked if I would run, and so I had a primary, won that handily, and then lost in the general. I lost in 98, and in 2000 we won, and I was elected to the House in my 3rd race, and got redistricted, and now ran for the Senate in 2004. Excuse me, and I've been there ever since. I never dreamt I'd be there that long, but God put me there. You know, John Quincy Adams says, "Duty is ours and results are God's." So we're here. You know, we're willing, and we face this challenge, as you know, and so it's but it's been an experience that has taught me well, and it's very frustrating working in government, and especially, you know, when you pass good legislation and then gets held up because leadership says the governor won't sign it, or we don't have the votes for this, and yet it never gets voted on, and so it's been a challenge. But that's, you know, that's pretty much who I am. And so I'm a state senator currently, and I changed my party affiliation earlier this spring so that I could run and change up how this system is working right now. And we think we're starting something that we're hoping turns into a movement, and that's who I am. I have one person that says, "Pyle, you're a trendsetter," and I believe I was the first person in Kansas to put conservative Republican on my signs. I did that in 2010, and we were down at the T-Bones ballpark running for Congress against an incumbent. And I had people from Missouri that wanted my sign because it had conservative Republican on it. And then what was interesting is watching everybody in the Republican Party wanted to be a conservative. And so they've changed the brand, but I'm trying to point out there is a difference. And a real conservative is a fiscal conservative and a social conservative, all packaged in one. That's the genuine package. And that's what I'm hoping to let people see. Contrast that with my two opponents, Schmidt and Kelly, because they are two peas in a pod. They are one and the same. And their voting record, if you analyze the 6 years that we ran or served together, Mark, in the Senate, throw out party line votes. I mean, they're there. You're going to see those. You're going to see a high percentage of votes where things pass unanimously. You throw those out, take them out, and then look at the votes that were passed with 22, 21 votes versus, and we had 30, 31 Republicans during that time period. So with Kathleen Sebelius being governor, it's pretty obvious who the team was that got her stuff passed and passed her budgets and spent us in a hole so that when the Governor Brownback came in 2011, there was $800 in the budget. So, you have to look at that. And I think Derek wants to run for that. They don't want me on stage with him, and I understand that. But if we can get our message out and conservatives see this as our opportunity, and that's who I am. I'm willing to step up to the plate, take on this challenge, and thank God every day I have a wife that stands beside me and stands with me and fights with me, because I literally could not do this without my wife. Jennifer is such a blessing to me, and she's been beside me for 42 years. I don't know why, but she's blocked cows in the alley, helped me vaccinate pigs and even helped cut them. And so, she's been around the horn as a farm wife. She knows her way around, and it's been a blessing to raise my children here and to have my grandchildren come. And we still have cattle, so don't know how long that's going to last, but we're just taking it one step at a time right now and acting on faith.
Yeah, wow, that's great. And I just want to mention to the viewer out there that when we were trying to set this interview up, it was quite at the last minute, because you were out in the field dealing with machinery that's constantly breaking down on you and doing pretty hard labor. And yet you find time to run for governor. And of course you were a citizen legislature, as a senator too. Just boggles my mind how people, farmers find time to help run proper government, and you do it. And yet you don't go out and brag about it. People don't realize what you're doing on an everyday basis. And then you go in and legislate and try to keep the government in line, basically, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, I've been called a disinfectant, and I know, if you milk cows, you use disinfectants, and cut pigs, do things like that. You're always using stuff like that on a farm. But we drive 80 miles one way to Topeka, and I commute back and forth. I sleep in my own bed at night, and I've always said, that when I drive through the district and come home, it keeps me in touch with the people of Kansas. And all you hear about down there in the Capitol is the bureaucrats. You hear the lobbyists. You hear a lot of taxpayer funded lobbyists are overwhelming the government right now. And but I try to keep in touch, and I come home and every morning, and I do chores. And fortunately, I had girls that helped me too, daughters that helped do that. But we try to keep in touch at the base, and it's been a battle. And I don't think, people sometimes wonder, how do you do that? And I wonder myself. It's been a challenge, and but we've done it since 2005 when I got sworn into the Senate. I did stay down there when I had bad inclement weather. I have two daughters in Topeka now, so I have a place to go. But I'm like an old raccoon. I sleep better in my old bed, and it's just the way it is. And so I can come home and get 5 hours sleep here. It's a lot better than tossing and turning in Topeka. So, but
Wow.
we stepped up, and my pivot was stuck this morning. So it was shut off when I woke up about 5:45, and I thought, oh no, but we got her run. It took a couple hours and got it out. But we've got a bean crop out there that's desperately wanting water right now, and I don't know how much more water I'm going to have because I have a system that here in northeast Kansas, and I don't know the rest. It's a little different than the rest of the state. I don't have a well. I have a pond that stores water and catches it, and then we use that in the course of the summer to spread it out on the crops.
Wow. Okay. You're an independent. You were a Republican.
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on the reason for becoming an independent, but that can't be all of it. Why independent over Republican Party?
Well, I've been a Republican for as long as I can remember. And I watched, I was actually on the platform committee back in 98 and 99, I believe, was when I served there. And the Republican Party writes a pretty conservative platform, but there's no adherence to it in the legislature. And so last fall, when Jeff Collier got out of the race, I had a conversation with a man, and but I told him, I said, and we found out, we don't know whether Einstein actually made the quote or not, but we don't know. But anyway, Einstein is attributed with saying something to the effect that if you do the same thing over and over again, why do you expect different results?
Right.
And I've watched as our party has a certain percentage, and I don't know exactly what that number is, of left-wing Republicans.
Right.
And they pretty much drive the truck. And I watched in 2018 as Kobach ran, and he lost to Laura Kelly. And so the question is why did we lose that race to Laura Kelly? And who voted for Laura Kelly that gave her 48% of the vote? And so when you answer that question, you have to look at it and say, well, somebody doesn't like conservatives. And that's how our party operates. And if we don't get a left-wing candidate in the Republican Party, they abandon us. But they expect us as conservatives to toe the line and support their candidate. I'm fed up with that, Mark. Mm-hmm. We have the numbers as conservatives. And so I stepped out and ran as an independent. And I'm trying to let conservatives know we have an opportunity to change the game. And if they don't want to support our candidate and they want to vote for a left-wing liberal like Kathleen Sebelius or Laura Kelly, and they're going to do that to us every time, then we're going to change the game. And that's what I'm doing. I'm running as an independent to give pro-lifers, fiscal conservatives, all the social issues. I mean, you can look at my voting record, you can see who I am. And we're doing that because as far as I'm concerned, I looked at the ticket and I said, I have no choice on that ballot. I've served with Derek. I've served with Laura. Their voting records on the key issues line up. They're liberal. And I'm going to give a contrast to the voters. I want to have a choice. And so that's the biggest reason. But I am pretty much an independent anyway. And people in the Senate know that I stand on my principles. And like I said, I love the Bible. I love God. And our founders based a lot of what they wrote, I think pretty much all of it, on principles that they found in scriptures. And when we walk away from those, we're walking away from God. And so our country is one that is a Judeo-Christian country. And we need to start acting like that again. And we've got a battle. We've got a lot of people out here that have no self-control. And I think, that's part of living a Christian life. And so I think we can do better. And I think that I give an opportunity to voters to look at this and say, hey, we have an opportunity to elect a genuine conservative, and let's do it. And we have the numbers. We don't need 50% to win this race, Mark. We need probably 40 wins it. So it's a way to write the course, to get it, to true it, to bring the balance, to put up. I'm putting a plumb bob up against Schmidt and Kelly's record in mine. If you're in construction, you know what a plumb bob is, and it's like shedding the light, opening the light, and the darkness flees away. We are trying to do that, and it's a big hurdle. I get that. We're trying to get people to look at the website to see some of the things that I've done in past. We've got more to add to it. I was looking at some amendments last night that I did that have failed, but yet, I get 17, 18 Republican votes. which is a majority of the caucus, but yet our leadership just no, we can't do that. So, if I get elected governor, it's going to shed some light on some things. So,
that would be exciting, and it would be refreshing. I think your new slogan should be principle over party candidate.
There you go.
Does that sound okay?
Well, yeah, I think I told one interview I had, I said, we don't put our party first. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and was a Republican. And I was quoted in the Sabetha Herald years ago saying that my faith comes first, my family. And so we know that God-given rights are what our Constitution is based upon. And so we have to get back to protecting those. And we've seen so much abuse in the last few years. And I never thought I would see things happen this quickly with government overreach the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost seems like the left is way ahead of us. They've already usurped the U.S. general government. And now they're coming after the states because really that's where all the retained power really is. And Kansas, I think, has been on the brink for a while. And it'd be nice to have an independent thinker who is a real conservative to help set that straight, get us back on the rails, so to speak.
We want to try. I mean, there's executive branch and the legislative and the judicial. And so, there's tug of war over all that power. And we want to give it a whirl. We want to give it a try. And I pray God will give me the people to put around me to help make those things happen that we desire to see.
Yeah, I think we need to get your message out there as much as possible, and hopefully these interviews will help. I believe. I want to direct people to your web page. Can you just spell it out for us?
Yeah, it's Pyle for FOR Kansas. So it's PYLEFORKANSAS.com.
Okay.
And we have some stuff on there I think people need to see. I do think people need to check the voting record. We will be adding some of that to the website here. And I don't know how soon I'm going to hit all that research that we're doing and putting together, but we're going to get that together. And you'll be able to see, on immigration, on life, you'll be able to see where Kelly and Schmidt voted together for those 6 years on clinic licensure. They voted against the Choose Life license plate. And if I go outside of those years, I can show you votes that that Derek made prior to that while we were in my first term in the Senate together. And there's just so much. It's overwhelming. And but the taxes, I opposed the Graves tax increase in 2002, and Derek was championing it. But I think people have to look and ask the question is, he was the majority leader for those 6 years with 30 Republicans. How did Kathleen Sebelius do anything? She should have been shut down with the Republican majority in the House and that size of majority in the Senate. None of that. But in 2005, it caved to the courts on the $1 billion that the courts ordered for school finance. And you and I both know the legislature is supposed to control the purse strings.
Exactly.
And they've caved. And once they caved, the courts have had that power and been doing that. We've had another Montoy we've had since then. So, and now the CPI compromise that's in place due to that, it's just interesting. More and more money, and yet the results continue to drop, the achievements. So we've got to turn that around. I think people want a bigger bang for their buck. And I've always talked about results-based education. And I think we can get a percentage of the dollars, a greater percentage for the classroom. And with these parents, these Liberty moms out here that don't want to co-parent with the government, I think we can formulate a group from them and put them, instead of going and running to the NEA, which, most governors do. I think I'm going to go to the parents and say, what is it you want to see? And we'll go that way. And, we can touch on healthcare freedom. I watched Derek basically didn't do anything as Governor Kelly implemented her mandates and government overreach. And I think I've said this before, we need to consider. So when you tell Dennis Pyle or Mark that we have to wear a mask. When government mandates a vaccine, whatever, what's the opposite? Well, how would the left feel if we issued a no mask mandate? No one can wear a mask, or no one can have a vaccine that wants to work in my administration. What if I were to do that? They would go crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I feel when you tell me I have to have it. So that demonstrates that government overreach is wrong.
Yeah.
That's a personal decision. If you want to choose to wear a mask, fine. If you choose not to, fine. If you don't want the vaccine, fine. If you do, fine. But that's your decision, not healthcare, not government, not no one. And if a business chooses to say, we're not going to let you in the door without a mask, then, that's their right. And I have a right to walk away and not go there, So it's all about freedom. We are fighting for our freedoms, Mark. You know that. We all sense it. We know how far this has gone astray. We're seeing it in our elections. As we that's an issue that right now, election, they can say integrity, I say security, because I want my ballot to be secure. I want my vote secure. I want to know that it counted. And I want to know that someone didn't suppress my vote by illegally voting. That's the real voter suppression, Mark, is when people are allowed to vote who have no right to vote, or they're doing it illegally and voting twice or however many times. And, I've worked hard to get the audit. I worked quietly, kept my head down, and we managed to get that audit. We're going to get some answers come January on processes and things like that, but that's going to open the door. As governor, I'll be able to work to change this and to fix things. And, I've got a pile of baling wire out here down by my barn. And sometimes I had to go fix some fence yesterday because my dozer guy's working out here and he hit the fence with a couple of trees he was taking out. And so I had to run back and there's places I use clips, but there's places that baling wire comes in really handy, and it's, we've got to figure out how to fix these problems and address them so that these people are upset for a reason, and we need to listen to them and stop just listening to the agencies and the governmental entities. I mean, we have to listen to all of them. They're all people of Kansas. But I want to do that as governor, and I want to put together some people committees. So
good. Boy, that sounds everything you're saying. Yeah. It's punching the buttons on me. I'm going, I love what I'm hearing right now. This is everything a true conservative would want in a governor. We're kind of tired of the attorneys and the lawyers running, a legal tyranny over our government. That's basically how I see it. We need normal people up there who know how to get things done and work with everyone.
Yeah.
Just like you mentioned, I mean, as a farmer, you deal with all sorts of unexpected circumstances, and you just take them one at a time and you try to conquer it and get back out there and produce food.
One step at a time, Mark. You don't get a little song that the girls learned when we were, don't stare up the stairs, just step up the step. Yeah. And I think that's what we're going to have to do. I mean, Kansas is very high per capita for government. We're in the top 45 and up, and we've got to address that. We've got to figure out how to create private sector jobs and drive this thing. And I've advocated for elimination of retirement income because we know a certain percentage leaves because of that. And we need to keep those folks here, keep those dollars in our economy. There's all kinds of property tax issues that need to be addressed. I don't know that I've seen a study on the cost of administering all that goes along with the property tax system. We need to look at that. And I don't know whether or not there's a way to get there, but I'd sure like to have single residence homes. When you pay your bill and your mortgage paid off, it's yours. But we've got so much tied to the property tax right now. That's going to have to be looked at, and we're going to look at that. So I'm not making any promises. I don't want to get people's hopes up, but I've got people out here in the ag community, and they're concerned about their property taxes on their ag land. As a farmer, I bring a good perspective to all of that, and a homeowner. So I think I can see both sides of those issues, but it is, we've got all kinds of issues that need to be addressed. And I just think that as a citizen, I'm out here in Kansas and I have these 13 grandkids. And my sakes, if taxes go up and the spending in the budget goes up as much as it has during what I've seen in my tenure in the Senate, it'll be awful. I mean, you just send in your paycheck, Mark. That's where we're headed. And somebody's got to get the reins on this, say, whoa, and stop these horses that are pulling us to the left constantly. And so that's why I'm an independent. We're trying to break the pattern of what we've seen in Kansas. And we believe it's time for a real conservative to get elected and shine a light on these legislators. They're going to have to, both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, are going to have to vote, hopefully, on some issues that will turn us in a different direction. And then as the people see who their legislators are, hopefully the people will respond. And it's all up to the people. If they don't want judicial reform, it'll be very difficult for me to get it. Because as you know, if you change the Constitution, you have to have 2/3 of both bodies, and then it goes to a vote of the people. We saw that with Value Them Both, and the people voted that down. But I'm not done in that fight either, Mark. I think that there are a lot of pro-life people that voted against that amendment. I believe that. I talked to people knocking on doors with the petition drive, and there are people that really want to save babies that did not like regulation of abortion in our Constitution. And so we're not done on that issue. People, I know Schmidt's made some quotes lately that show that he doesn't want to deal with it. If you've seen those articles, you'll know what I'm talking about. I know they're floating around in social media out there. I've seen them. I saw them yesterday. So if I'm pro-life, there's no doubt. I was in the delivery room with all 6 of my little girls, and I'm pro-life. Those little babies they didn't change the moment they came out of the womb. They were in there kicking, and we need to save them. So we're going to keep fighting on that. And I think the first step is judicial reform. I'm going to work hard to try to do my part to make that happen. And if you watch legislature, I've had amendments even this last session to try to put some reforms in the nominating commission to change the way we're doing it. Yeah, I think outside the box, I'm very creative. I've been told I'm one of the most creative legislators up there. I know how to maneuver. And I think as governor, I'll bring a perspective. I'll have that legislative experience that I can work with them. And I know what they're going through. I know the challenges they face. And I certainly want to do that. I want to work with them. But at the same time, I want to move things. I want to make Kansas better for my kids and my grandkids. I want to relieve their tax burden. I want a government that's more limited in scope. People say you want smaller government. I say I want limited government. So I'm going to try to find some constitutional experts that can come in and show us what are we doing that is not fit in those guidelines, and what should we be doing that we're not doing. And so it's not about smaller or bigger. It's about what does the Constitution say and how does it limit? What are we supposed to do? And I believe, I've said it before. I think the old saying is your freedom ends where my nose begins, Mark. And so we need to practice that. Government's been reaching over and wiping our noses for it, and a mask mandate you and vaccinate you and stick you and jab you. And we're going to do everything for you. We're going to nursemaid you. We're going to, and we have got to start getting, we don't need that from government. We don't need that big brother in such an intrusive way.
Wow. Refreshing.
Thank you.
This is great. I appreciate what you're saying so much. And I think that's going to ring true in a lot of ears. And so I'm really happy that you're doing this. Now, I want to kind of go off a little bit. Your lieutenant governor pick is Kathleen Garrison, right? From Cheney,
yes.
Kansas.
Yes.
Constitutionally speaking, if you're incapacitated or for some reason you get sick and the office is void of a governor, she has to take your place and be the acting governor. Yeah. Why Kathleen?
Well, there were a lot of reasons. I was praying. We interviewed a few people. one of the top things, of course, they had to be willing to do, because we had such a, I mean, it's not easy to find someone who's willing to change their party affiliation, number one. And Kathleen, she looked at my record, she looked at somewhat of who I am, and she was willing to change to an independent. Big step. But she's also, when I talk to her, I think she genuinely cares. I know she does. She genuinely cares about Kansas. She's got a lot of children. She's a divorced mom. She had a marriage of 30 years. She's had life experiences. She can relate, and she will tell you, you know, she had a child at 16. She's got some things that I think she brings to the table that are going to help this administration. She very much shares our values, and so she's very much on the same page as I am on the life issues. She's supportive of Second Amendment issues. She's fiscally conservative. So yeah, I think it was a good fit, and I think people of Kansas are going to love Kathleen Garrison, and she needs to learn more about the legislative process, and you know, as both of us do, we both need to learn more about governing. And I know people can rail on me for saying that, but you know, we don't know what challenges we're going to face in the coming 4 years. I don't think that Governor Kelly, when she was elected in 2018, knew that we would face COVID. Certainly hope she didn't, but so we'll have things that come up that we're going to have to deal with. But the general government, you know, putting together a budget, trying to adhere to constitutional, and but I do believe Kathleen loves God. I think she wants to serve him in the same way I do, and that she's been led to do this. And when we asked her, she said yes. So it's a good ticket, and geography wise, it's excellent. I mean, she's from Hayesville, southwest of Wichita, and we need that. So I think it's a winning ticket. I believe we can win. I didn't get in this. People say you're just trying to be the spoiler. That's false. That is not true. I see the dynamics in this race, and I look at all of our voting records for 6 years, and Laura and Derek are the same. They are both on a mission to move things to the left. They are not going to stop this coal train and put a block in front of it. They're not going to do that. My goal is to turn it around and give Kansas a taste of freedom.
Mm-hmm. Great. You know, I'm really focused on think locally, act locally type government. You know, we have to focus on our state government and get our own house in order. But we kind of touched on the U.S. general government earlier, that it's completely usurped. It's off the rails. I don't even know if it's savable. But the way to chip away at it, I believe, is getting your state government in order and get people who actually understand that their constitution comes first. And the U.S. Constitution is really written for the U.S. general government to follow. It's not written to keep the states in line. We have our own constitution. And, you know, when you take the oath of a governor, is it your state's constitution that you're going to obey first? You're going to defend and protect that one first? Is that the way it's going to be?
Well, the rule of law, Mark, you have to look at the United States Constitution, and it has a statement there that says that the rights not specifically delegated to the federal government are delegated to this. They're ours. They're the states. Yeah. The problem we have is the federal government has been taking over more and more, and they do it so slick. It's like getting a rat to drink antifreeze. You know, if that's the nearest liquid, he'll take it. Well, I have watched the baiting over the years. You know, we'll give you this amount of money if you implement more of these safety standards on car seats for children. And I read a book. I used to have it in my Senate desk. This was years ago on the Senate floor. I used it in debate, and I'll use this for illustration because I think it really does exemplify what's going on. And in that book, it was like 100 and some uh, accident-prone accidents that are in America, in our country anyway. It was all about accidents. Like children can fall on an open door of a dishwasher. You know, it's just a dangerous, very dangerous thing. How many children get caught in elevator doors? How many children get, you know, it just went on and on with all of these 101 examples of everyday things that we deal with as parents with children and are a risk to our children that we don't even recognize. And so here we were debating, we're going to mandate, you know, boost. It was I think it was the bill where they put the weight limits on and the heights and all of this. They have to be, you know, and I think that pulled down $10 million, if I remember right. I'm not trying to be perfect here and cite everything to the T, but I stood up and argued for a couple hours, and I read a lot of those illustrations out of that book. And I said, so now we're putting it on the safety belts to get this $10 million. Would we have been doing, that's the question, would we have been doing that? And that was my argument. We've got a lot of other instances out here that are hurting and harming children and killing them in instances, and we aren't doing a thing about it. And yeah, there was anger over Pyle making those arguments in the chamber.
Oh my.
But the truth is, we were doing it because we would get federal dollars. Well, you don't get federal dollars. The federal government's buying something, and that's what they're buying. They're buying more control over your personal lives. You're talking to a kid who grew up. I used to take my children to the local grain elevator to get them a pop and a candy bar, and they could ride in there with me, you know, right beside me, behind my shoulder. Can't do that anymore. We used to haul the back of the truck. We'd throw all the kids in and go to the pond to go fishing. We'd had to drive a mile down the road. Can't do that anymore. I mean, it's just at one point, this nanny government, people have got to stand up and say enough. And I think we're beyond that point. I've had enough of the theater with the masks, and I'll call it that. I had a nurse tell me that when I went in for an appointment. I don't want to sell her out by any means, but at the same time, you know, they're tired of it too. And, you know, there is no, I mean, the science isn't there. I mean, it's just not. I use those masks for dust control. Dad had bins, and we cleaned out bin stuff, you know, with them and the silos, and the dirt still gets through. And I actually asked the guy, one of the lobbyists, when we were on the chemo bill, I said, well, he was a farm background too. And I said, did those masks keep out everything? No, they don't, Senator. And if they can't keep out a dust particle, they're certainly not going to keep out a virus particle.
Right.
So we have got to bring reason to these things. And, you know, while we're on it, Mark, that chemo, I haven't put this on a website, but somebody called me yesterday and said, Pyle, you need to put that PPE stuff you worked on, because nobody else paid attention. Nobody would do it. But I remember asking the committee, we submitted, I think the chairman, trying to think who the chair is, a house guy from Topeka, from Shawnee County. He was the chair of that committee that summer. It was an interim. Anyway, I asked the committee to make an official request to the adjutant general, because he had been before us. And I had a couple constituents, and I had some others that were working with nursing homes claiming they couldn't get PPE equipment. And so I wanted to see everything that was listed as PPE equipment. I wanted to know what it was, how much of it we had, who was requesting the PPE, who was getting the PPE. And we were given an official response from the adjutant general's office that the governor's office told them not to respond to those questions. Now, Mark, as a legislator, that's offensive. We have to have those answers to govern. And so we got nothing. Now, I released that chain of emails, and I should post that. I should put that on my website, I guess, and let people read it, because it shows you who Governor Kelly is. What were they afraid of? Who was getting PPE? And then, you know what? Maybe that's something we have to find out, because, you know, it's not too late to go back and look at that record and find out. But the AG didn't. He knew about it. He saw what was going on in the KEMA. They were watching the KEMA. They had their guy in the meeting. They didn't do anything either.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. We got two peas in a pod, and Laura Kelly and Derek Schmidt,
Yes.
and we need to get the answer. I did a not just my election audit, um, but I had an audit on taxpayer funded lobbying. Only 22% of governmental entities responded to post audit. That ought to alarm every citizen of Kansas. They need to respond when the legislative post audit asks them to tell them how much we're spending on a lobbyist or how much we're spending on dues to an association that hires a lobbyist.
Right.
Because we've got to know how much of our taxpayer dollars, I can point to schools across this state that they put in their budget and they pay a lobbyist to come to Topeka for 90 days. My school districts can't afford to do that.
Right.
And so it brings an unequal balance to the legislative process when those unfair, to me, it's not fair. I'm a rural legislator and I watch those 5 counties, and they dominate in the leadership races. They dominate in where the money's going. I'm going to bring a rural perspective, definitely. Now, I have communities in my district that are municipalities, and we will listen to them too. I've balanced that well as a senator and can continue to balance that as a governor. But I think people need to see that there are a lot of concerns out here to where government is not responding, and not even to the legislature in appropriate ways. And to me, that's somewhat of an abuse.
But it's a corruption.
Yes,
it's a lack of transparency when they're actually keeping information from the state legislature. I mean, that's as bad as you can get.
You're hiding the information. I mean,
golly.
I'm sorry, but we need to get information, and we have to have it to act. I mean, we get enough false testimony. We need the real stuff. We need the documented data. And that's something that I want to continue to debate on. You hit on that. It's interesting because there's been a lot of arguments over the year that school districts just all report in different, and there needs to be a general accounting practices put in place. And I'm all for transparency. I think there's one state, maybe 2, that have checkbook online basically that shows you all of the expenditures and the receipts for their state, and it's online. Now, I don't know who has the time to go look at it, but if you wanted to, Mark, it needs to be. Why shouldn't the people of Kansas see that? And that's something I got that on my list. Transparency statewide, it needs to be out there so everybody can see it. And then if the citizens want to rise up and say we don't like this portion, they can. Hey, they should have a voice, and we can give them that voice.
I think that sounds like a true representation of the people.
Absolutely.
You just nailed it. Now, speaking of transparency, I want to jump over to something, and we're about ready to close this interview because I've taken too much of your time. No, this is great. I love what you're saying. I've talked to people up in the Johnson County area and other places that are telling me that the Kansas Open Records Act is not being obeyed by our state government. They're making requests for information, in particular on the election, and they're being rejected. What's your feeling on that?
Well, there are laws, and on the books, but they should be able to get the records. And unless there's some personal issue on there that would prevent it, which I can't really think of anything. But I wrote a letter to A.G. Smith asking him, and I think it's on I'm not sure if it's on my website or not. I know that it's, anyway, I'm not sure. I don't know whether we've posted that or not, but I wrote a letter back, I think it was in April, asking for him to stop the retention of records schedule, which requires them to destroy records at certain points. Well, we had an audit approved, and we needed those 2020 ballots secured, and all of, it just all needs to be protected, especially when there's an ongoing audit. And I know one election official told me I'm not destroying anything. Well, the statutes say they shall, so those election officials can get in trouble if they don't adhere to those laws. And so, but if they haven't been destroyed and somebody puts in an open records request, I don't see any reason. I'd have to see what their reasoning was for denying it. But to me, the public should be able to access those records.
Okay. Well, I thought so, since you actually actively were trying to get the audit.
Yes. Well, I had to keep my head down, Mark. I mean, that's I met quietly with those auditors, and I listened to the testimony. There was testimony in the House and the Senate on the elections and the problems, and there was a lot the year before, but nobody did anything.
Right.
And I thought, the only way I'm going to get this is if I keep my head down and do it the way I know how to do it. And that was to get the auditors. I specifically asked the auditors to let me know an hour before that agenda went public. And so it was a Friday morning. She contacted me at 9 o'clock. She said, Senator, it will be published at 10 o'clock. It will go public. And it was 3-4 hours later, I get a call from the chairman that Secretary of State, others don't want my audit. And I knew I would face that challenge. But we had notified people in the districts of the members on that committee, and they were calling and they were writing their legislators that they want the Pyle audit. And so we worked hard to get those votes lined up to get that audit passed, and then we had to make sure it stuck. And it's ongoing right now, and the results will come back in January. It's not a perfect audit, Mark. It doesn't have everything everybody wanted, but to get an audit approved that's 7 months long with 4 full-time auditors, I praise God I got it done. I praise God that they voted to do that. And but that's how it works. I mean, you've got to find the votes, and that's what we're going to need the public to engage. If you think you're going to elect the governor to go up there and be David going against Goliath, we're going to need people to engage. We're going to need people contacting their legislators to help push our agenda forward, right? Because that's who they're going to listen to.
Yeah, and even the governor has limitations constitutionally on what you can and cannot do. So people need to understand that.
Yes.
Wow. I tell you what, I've taken so much of your time, and you answered just about all the questions that I have on the front and back page of my interview outline here. So what I'm going to do is just, if we haven't covered everything, or if there's something that you want to tell the public out there, the voter, about yourself or anything, you want to take that time right now and just close with that?
Well, if I looked over my notes, I'm sure I could find something.
Well,
I just say, we're putting together a coalition, and the people that are concerned about elections should be voting for Dennis Pyle.
Right.
People that want to fix that problem should be supporting Dennis Pyle. And if the moms out there that have their T-shirts that say we don't co-parent with government, I agree with you. We homeschool our children for that reason. We do not. Government does not own my children. My children are the gift of God to my family. That's my wife and I. And so we've got those issues. I am the pro-life candidate. I'm the only pro-life candidate in this race that I know of. I don't know whether the Libertarian stands. I've not heard or anything, So, but between me and Derek and Laura, I'm the pro-life candidate. It's offensive to me that he even tries to claim that he's pro-life with his voting record the way it is. I just find that disgusting. But I would just ask people for prayer. We need definitely prayer, because our days are very long. We need finances, and we need your help. So, there's a donate page on my website people can go to. They can mail a check, which saves us the percentages that we lose when they contribute by credit card. But I understand the convenience, and there's a cost to that. Mm-hmm. So, but if they want to help that way, that's certainly, we're going to be having a piece of literature designed, and it will be printable from the website, that will be about me, and we'll have some of the voting record of my opponents on it. We're not quite ready to put that up. It's still being in the research process. It's still going on, but people will be able to print those off and go give them to whoever they want. If they want to knock on doors, they can knock on doors. I mean, this is the kind of campaign we're running, Mark. We're counting on the grassroots, but I do need a lot of prayer. It's like I say, my days are long. This morning started out with pivot issues and irrigation problems. So fortunately, my car and truck are running well. Hope that continues. But we're going to have fun, and God's going to bless this, I believe, because we prayed about this a lot before we did it. but I just, I don't know. There's probably some issues we haven't touched upon that people care about, but they can email us too. That contact information is there on the website. We'll try to get an answer. And if we overlook it, I'm sorry. I apologize to anybody that's tried to contact us. We just set up this new system, Mark, as I told you. I've been working off of my camera.
It worked.
This stuff, and that creates problems when your battery goes dead. It creates problems when the guy you're set up, and then he says, "Can you turn your phone horizontal?" And you've got it taped to the stand so it won't fall off. And it just we've been having fun, and it's just we're living good, and we love our state. And I've had the blessing of serving people for these long time, and I want to bring that experience to the governors, just to that office. And I mean, we've seen what happens when we elect these lefties, and we have got to, as a state, we've got to say, hey, you know what, enough. Let's start going the other direction. We're going to be the abortion capital of the whole Midwest. Excuse me, the whole Midwest. That ought to concern everybody. And we're going to look hard at what we can do from day one to slow that process down. So we need a lot of prayer, because I'll tell you what, it's hard to know, who am I going to get, Mark? I mean, where do I go to draw the resources? I mean, I pray, Lord, give me wisdom on finding the people to put around when we win this thing in November. So I need your prayers, definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Senator Dennis Pyle running for Kansas governor. And Dennis, I really appreciate your taking time to do this interview. I think it's important. And I tell you what, I'm going to be asking you for some signs. I want to support you.
We're considering how we're going to do that, Mark.
I'll send money.
We may want you to do like these Trump supporters out here and just make one and send us a picture. Maybe we'll just figure out a way to have a competition. Maybe you can have a chicken sandwich with the governor if you win the sign competition.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, we got people around us that are creative and coming up with ideas. We're not sure, because when you have limited sources, I'm not the Republican, I'm not the Democrat. I don't have the Republican Governors Association, Democrat Governors Association throwing $10 million at my race.
Right.
We don't have that.
Yeah,
we are starting a movement.
The voters out there need to understand that we're not hiring the candidate with the most money. We need to stop doing that. We need to hire the candidate that you're probably not hearing about. Yeah. Don't.
There's a different way of doing things. And our founders, Mark, they did not like the idea of a two-party system. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we've got. And we see the money behind it and who's pushing it. And yes, there's a war. I get it. That there needs to be things changed in DC. I get that. But when you have a conservative on the ballot and it's clear who the conservative is, you need to support that person if you're a conservative. If you're loyal to a party over your ideology, something is not right. And your principle over party, you're right. And that's what it needs to be. And we've got to get that out to people, and they've got to see Derek and Laura do not share our ideologies. They do not share our principles. And we want to protect the unborn. We're going to protect your God-given Second Amendment rights, all of those God-given rights that we have. Freedom of religion. We're not going to close churches. We're not going to close schools. That's one issue that we didn't talk about, but I have proposed a constitutional amendment in the past that only a local school board could close a school, because, when the courts threatened it, and we've seen all that, only a local school board knows exactly what their budget items are, what they need to keep their school operating. And, if the legislature gets in a dilemma with the courts and the governor and the money's not flowing, a school has to make tough decisions. But they're the ones that should be making those decisions, not the state, not the judiciary. It should be local control, and that's I'm all for that. So I'm all for these Liberty moms, go moms.
Yeah.
So we're gonna build a team from them, and we're gonna find some people with the healthcare. We're gonna put all that together, and we're gonna be ready to roll. It's gonna be hard to get this all set up and get it rolling, but God knows He has a plan and a purpose, and we'll give Him the glory.
Excellent. You're absolutely right. Boy, that sounds like a great note to end on.
Thank you.
Senator Dennis Pyle, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Mark.
And God bless you, and we'll be rooting for you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Verity Seeker signing off.